Hey guys, welcome. It is Tuesday night. I know, it's hard to believe. I walked out early. I thought it was January. I'm wishing it was January. It is not January at all. It is just the end of the year. We only have how many days do we have left to see if we made our New Year's resolution? Do you guys make New Year's resolutions? No. I resolved when I turned 50 to stop buying exercise equipment. So now I have no place to dry my sweaters. But yeah, so I'm excited about this year wrapping up and a new one coming in. So that's the Advocate. So we're going to start out with some burning questions. I do have some questions that we had ahead of time. People have asked us if they can send in questions early because there are some people that don't want their information screenshotted, is that good English, and shared with the school districts. So we're going to answer some of those questions. One of the questions I think that would be really important for you guys to know is when you're writing an IEP goal, you're kind of missing your legal protections as we're spending so much time writing the goal that we don't have correct clarification on who's going to deliver the SDI, who's going to deliver the specially designed instruction. So it's really important in the IEP goal that you make sure that you have captured who is the implementer. The implementer is the person responsible for working on the goal, providing specially designed instruction, and or collecting data. So make sure in your IEP goals that we have captured an implementer. I was in an IEP today. I won't tell you where. Yeah, it was called Make It Up As You Go Independent School District. I don't know if you ever worked there, but it's craziness. And every IEP goal was by a general ed teacher. I felt like there was no I or E or P in there. Yeah. She goes, well, we don't want to just over-support them. Don't you like that? We don't want to over-support the children. You're not. You never did. So I don't know how the special ed teacher is going to get there if there isn't one in there. So make sure the implementer is at least a related service provider or a special education teacher, including a general education teacher. Make sure that's on all of your IEP goals. The other thing is your IEP goals right under implementer. It will say that IEP progress is commensurate with progress with grades, and that's fine. I pick up that pace a little bit. Under that, I put methods of evaluation, weekly data collection sheets. Methods of evaluation, weekly data collection sheets. That's how I end up collecting the raw data collection sheets because I put under there methods of evaluation, weekly data collection sheets, and then I have the progress to be at the maximum once a month. That way we don't wait a whole grading period to see if the goal is good. Okay, so Ms. Shannon, you have some questions from our friends?
Yes. First one, how do you handle it when a SPED director says no one-on-one because it is not in our budget?
Yeah, so I say please don't discuss your budget in front of me or my client. That makes me very uncomfortable. There's nowhere in the federal law or the state law that has anything to do with a student being denied their educational benefit based on your budget.
All right, next one is this person was told that Pennsylvania is a two-party consent and that she wasn't able to voice record the IEP meeting. Is that true?
So I think there's somewhere between 7 and 11 states that are two-party disclosures. I was on an interview today with the Office of Civil Rights. And so what you do is in your state, you'll just Google, is my state a one disclosure state for recordings? And what that means is that if both parties are adults and neither of you have a cognitive difference, one of you can record knowing that you're recording without informing the other one. That being said, there are some states that are still a one disclosure state. However, it is the school-based members' decision whether or not they choose to be recorded. But most states are one disclosure states, and most states you can record your IEP meetings. I can tell you, depending on if you ever have to go forward legally, certain offices at the federal level will listen to recordings.
Okay, that's good to know there. Ronnie says, thanks to you, I collect the data like a mad woman. Love that.
Thank you. Let's hear it for Ronnie. Whoop, whoop.
Woohoo! We've got another question here. I want my son moved back to learning support. His IEP manager is fighting me. What do I do?
So what is your manager fighting you on? What are they fighting them on, Shannon?
Okay, let's see. Crazy Irish Starter, if you would let us know what are they fighting you on there. Another question. My husband went to my son's school in Texas since he was there to peek on our son and was told no.
Yeah. So, I mean, you don't have a right just to roll up in your kid's class anymore for a number of reasons, right? For safety reasons. And there are privacy acts in place as well. Certainly, if you notify the school that you want to do an observation and you give them time to schedule that, that's allowable.
Okay, crazy Irish daughter responded here. Let me reread that question.
Says he needs regular. It says he needs regular ed classes to prepare him for college. It does.
Yeah.
I went to regular ed classes and I was a failure in college. So he needs to have an IEP that helps him make progress and meet the 3 legal thresholds. They are gainful employment, independent living, and further education. I would call bologna sauce on that, which is a legal requirement. It's not really. I would just say I respectfully disagree with your understanding of the federal and state law as it relates to my students' individualized education program. And again, based on what you're saying, you must be about to present me some data that I could look at when you screen share to support your position. Christina, you got some questions?
I do. So what areas should parents be asking for on the initial eval if they are suspecting ADHD, sensory issues, or anxiety?
So the initial eval, we ask for the same 8 areas. The initial evaluation, you ask for the same 8 areas. We don't do a screener. We don't do informal. We don't waive. I get parents all the time, oh, they told me I could waive it. We're not waiving anything. So the FIIE, the full initial individualized evaluation includes 1, speech and language evaluation to include pragmatic, medical, physical, sociological, IQ to include all 7 Gs, achievement, adaptive behavior, and then, of course, a full psychological evaluation or emotional behavior, depending on where you are in the United States, and any needed related service, which could be everything from orientation and mobility to assistive technology and written expression to occupational therapy and fine motor and all of the things. So if you don't test, you don't know. And testing does one of 2 things. It identifies or eliminates. And there's nothing more regretful than not have testing and then you didn't get supports for an area that your child needed.
Okay. And then how do you handle a senior with an IEP that cannot pass SOLs and hence not allowed to graduate?
So SOL stands for Save Our Leadership. I don't know what it stands for. So there are students that can't pass tests but don't have any deficits. So what is it they're wanting him to pass to graduate? There's no requirement in the United States of America to pass a bunch of standardized tests to graduate. If we did, we'd have a bunch of 40-year-olds going to high school.
And then someone was told by an advocate to add social as a related service, not social worker. What is that?
So social was what I did in the 80s, and I did it well. So social is not a thing. I understand the intent of it. So a social worker is going to be able to provide wraparound services depending on where you are in the United States. They might provide counseling as related services, support services, but adding social does not give you enough clarification. Remember, words are everything, and words are everything under the law. And when you're talking about a 504 or an IEP, you are talking about the law. So make sure that you get it exactly right based on IDEA and your state standards.
And then, can a school deny an evaluation for a student who has moved schools multiple times due to being in foster care?
It's a really good question that OSEP just talked about. So OSEP just put out a letter. Will remind me, Christina, to bring it next Tuesday night. So OSEP just put out a letter about let's not do that for kids that are transient. And usually transient was a different context, but we live in a mobile world, right? People move all the time. People relocate for jobs. So it very much says that we do not deny kids testing or a robust IEP because they've moved a lot. So we'll get that letter for you next week, but it just came out from the Office of Special Education Programs. You should be on the email list for OSEP. If you are not, don't get off my live because your life would be over. as you know it. But after this live, get on the OSEP email list, because then you'll get all of those updates. Those are federal guidelines to the states to get it together.
And then, so it says in Wisconsin, they have an IEP that says the child receives adult support for math and ELA. Should they be receiving support services during ISS?
I feel like these are trick questions. But yes, so if you're in the building and you haven't unenrolled, or if you're in jail, or if you're in ICU, or if you are homebound, the requirement to implement the IEP goes nowhere. I had a child who had charge syndrome. She's deafblind, and she had been in school suspended for 20-something days, and the principal, with all of his bravado, said, and we would go in there once in a while and check on her. I said, I'm sorry, what? We would go in there once in a while and check on her. I'm like, but, I mean, where's her interpreter? She's deafblind. Well, that's part of it. That's how you learn from ISS. So that's a problem. So if you're in in-school suspension, of course, you still get your IEP. If you're in juvenile detention, you get your IEP. If you're in a psychiatric unit, you get your IEP. So OSEP is the Office of Special Education Programs. If you go to ed.gov, and search OSEP, there'll be an area to sign up.
And then one more, and then I'm going to pass it to the amazing Shannon. So this was an anonymous question that came in.
Okay.
My child has missed 147 days of school in the past 2 years. Family asked for a school attendance goal. District said that it is an expectation and they do not do goals around attendance.
Well, let's just talk about that. I feel like you might be a little bit of a mind reader. So today, as I said in the IEP meeting, helping the team teen times. So we write a goal based on the student's unique need. So if the student needs something, we write a goal for it. So I call bologna sauce on that.
Address school avoidance in relation to attendance.
Right, so that's an educational need, right? It's an educational need. I'm setting you up for gainful employment, independent living, and further education. So if there is a need related to their disability, we write a goal around that, right? We work on a re-entry plan. We work on her learning that skill. So our job is to identify a deficit and then identify a way to teach her a skill, a strategy to mitigate the impact of that disability.
Okay. Here is a question from the comments. What is your rule of thumb when it comes to qualifying for adaptive classes in the resource room?
So I don't know what an adaptive class is in a resource room. So if you need resource, so resource is a self-contained class, or it's a class with only disabled peers. Usually that is because you have a student that's multiple years behind academically. However, I've had some kiddos that were there for other reasons. An adaptive setting is usually for kiddos that have neurological or emotional needs or behavioral needs that need a highly structured setting to make gains on their IEP goals. Somebody asked me if I'm in the Christmas era. I am always in the Christmas era. And this is from Disney World. And I don't think you can have enough Mickey Mouse shaped bright lights.
Oh, I love it.
On the internet.
Okay, can parents request a teacher's lesson plan?
I wouldn't. I mean, that's a little bit like reaching in somebody's wallet. If you don't think your teacher is a good teacher, then address that, right? You can give me a lesson plan. Anybody that's been to my training knows that I have almost a 200-page workbook. I've never looked at it. So it's not how and everybody behind me laughed, right? Thank you for the TikTok hat. It's not how I teach, right? So you can have the world's greatest lesson plan and be a terrible teacher. You can have a couple of notes on a cocktail napkin from Mardi Gras and be the world's greatest teacher. It's really about the outcome, right? Two things happen in a class, instruction and production. And what is the production for my student? And what can I do as it relates to instruction and adjusting that, right, to make better outcomes for a kiddo? Yeah, and by the way, we love teachers. We are confused about how amazing teachers are. Like, really, somebody takes your kids all day long, all year, and you don't even give them a Christmas gift. Really, you should just walk up to the school, get down on your knees, and kiss their feet. And ask them, do you want dark or milk chocolate? Really. That's how I start out my IEP meetings.
Okay, our school psychologist told faculty that the military won't touch kids with IEPs trying to enlist.
That is, let me just lean in and tell you what that is. Stupid. 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 What we need is some more, can we just have a few more people like project fear? There are people in the military that had an IEP. You've been around 100 people at work today, 100 people at the mall. Have you ever walked up to somebody and said, do you have an IEP? No. There's no IEP record. You weren't arrested. You didn't write hot checks to a bank. You're not going to jail with Amber and Johnny. There's no IEP record. It's not stamped on your head. It's just the goofiest thing, right? So, and you're not even allowed to have that on your transcript anymore. So if you needed special listen, gifted and talented is special education. So we just have to stop with all that. If you want your kiddo to be in the military and you believe that he has the cognition, emotionality, and physicality to be successful there, then I say go for it. But nobody's going to go, did you have an IEP in high school? Military persons that I have been blessed to serve as their advocate, they're happy to have men and women that want to enlist and serve our country.
Agreed. Is it true that a kid with ADHD can only qualify for a 504 because they fall under OHI?
Well, if you're OHI, you're not a 504. Bloop. So OHI is a federal eligibility under special education. If you have a disability, say it with me, and you have a need for instruction, an IEP. If you have a disability and you're excited about an accommodation, 504. You choose.
All right, let's see. Christina, you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm just going to address something before we're having a fist fight in the comments. There'll be none of that. Listen, there are a million characteristics of ADHD that show up in people. There's 13 characteristics that you're looking for when you're looking for a determination of an educational eligibility. So I have kiddos that have ADHD that have 5 goals as it shows up in their life. So a 504, I hate to tell you, love, you're being jacked around. You really are. If you are excited about your 504, you shouldn't be. There's nothing exciting about a 504. 504, which is not in the federal code under education, is under civil rights. So under education is the 300s, 300 to 399, right? 504 is under the 500s. It's a civil right. And all it says is you can't be discriminated based on wanting and needing an accommodation, right? So it was never intended to capture all of these kids. This 504 plan that you have, my love, it's like my natural hair color. It does not exist. It doesn't. You have no real protections under a 504. Did you know this about your 504? They can call down your 8-year-old with the 504, all the adults in the building, and your 8-year-old and never tell you. Did you know that? Does that sound exciting? And they can take things off your 504 with your 8-year-old in a meeting when you're not there. Doesn't sound like a good deal to me. But you tell me.
So we have an amazing teacher that would like to know if she can advocate as a teacher as well.
Yeah, we're all advocates, right? I mean, that's why we train everybody that sits at the IEP table. I do teacher development nationwide, and we love teachers. We love diagnosticians and LSSPs and principals and assistant principals and all the people, right? It's often not well received if when you're advocating for the student, it goes against what your principal told you. And that's, I don't work at a school. I'm not as amazing as everybody else. I've never worked at a school. But it's often not well received if it's not in alignment with what leadership wants.
Very true. Can a child with dyslexia and dysgraphia have reduced spelling lists? The district refused to add it to her IEP.
You can have a reduced spelling list if it benefits the student with a disability. It's really quite simple. We've lied and made it complicated. So this is what you do. So when you hear something goofy, like let me give you an example. I won't tell you what state I was in, Missouri. And they told me that they could only have one educational eligibility. So as I'm sitting there, because I've got 2 laptops because I spend a lot of time on HSN. So I'm typing on my other laptop to DESE, and I emailed them, and their response back was, I said I was in an IEP meeting in Missouri. They said you can only have 1 eligibility. And the response back from the state compliance was, there's no such law that you speak of. So when you're in a meeting and somebody tells you at the school you can't have something, I would just get on your little laptop and type state compliance and say I was in a meeting and they said I couldn't have this. Can you tell me where that is in the code? Write that down. Can you tell me where that is in the code? And so the people at the state are going to either show you where that is in the code in Michigan or California or Wyoming. I almost said Miami. Is that a state? And it'll either be in the code or it's not in the code. Right? So then I go back to the meeting and I go, dear state, the dear state that we're in, Missouri, wanted you to know that there's no such law that you speak of. And at the next meeting, they said, okay, we'll add the other 2 eligibilities. Just like that. So I can't spend my bandwidth schooling everybody, but I'm certainly going to go back with what the state said and attach it to the deliberations.
Amanda would like you to know and just to say thank you. I got my daughter her IEP she needed with your help.
Oh, good job. Good job.
All right, so we're going to start a fight.
Okay.
No one told me as a teacher I need to collect, I say the D word.
Data. If you don't collect data, how would you know if it's working? So let's just figure this out, right? Just basic, you collect data for every other student, right? It's called a grade book. Right? The state collects data. It's called district and state assessments. So I put in, 13 accommodations. I want to see, does he need 13? Maybe he only needs 4. How I know that is he either stopped needing them, he refused them, and that's data that I collect. 36 instructional weeks is a long time. It's not punitive. We're not asking to collect data to be mean. We're collecting data to see if what we did worked, right? So when you go to Weight Watchers, which I don't because they weigh you, but if you go to Weight Watchers, how they know if the plan's working is if you're weighing less, right? That's the main data point, right? So if you need less special education, it's because we collected data that says that. Or you might need more special education or a different variation of those supplementary aid support services and accommodations. So the data drives the support that we give the student. As a person that has over 60 open federal investigations across the United States, I can promise you when a federal investigator comes into a school to investigate one of my allegations, they're going to say, hey, Shannon, you're the general ed teacher. Hey, Christina, you're the special education teacher. Karen Mayer Cunningham said that you didn't collect data on the IEP goals 1.3, 1.6, 1.8. Can you please provide us your data collection sheets? It's not my rule.
So should a school psychologist be doing classroom observations as part of their evaluation?
Absolutely. That would be so appropriate, and they should be doing 3 of them in 3 different settings. And let's not do recess and lunch. Let's do it where there's an actual need. I like when they're evaluating for a specific learning disability and they watch them in PE and lunch. He did really good during spelling at lunch. There's no spelling. Yeah.
True.
The reports that I get, he opened his milk just fine. It's fantastic. Is milk on the state test? Because I would be a fantastic state test taker.
How long does a school have to answer a formal request for out-of-district placement?
So a formal request for out-of-district placement is not a request. If you're wanting out-of-district placement, that's going to be a series of meetings that's going to quantify somebody at the district level, usually the superintendent, releasing funds. So one of the things that we train on in our 2-day and especially in our 10-week mastermind is I am always looking when I'm in a meeting for the person that can do 2 things, that can make decisions and that can release funds. And when I'm in a school-based meeting, that person usually isn't there. If I'm looking for out-of-district placement, those are some big decisions that are going to have somebody that's going to have to write a check for.
Okay, so I have a student with ASD and has dyslexia. The school says they can't work with his dyslexia due to his ASD.
What? That sounds fantastic. So let's have a meeting so we can look at out of district private placement for the totality of his educational years.
Then could a parent refuse a formal observation tracker for an FBA or a BIP?
So a parent could refuse special education testing. A parent can refuse initial provision of special education services. A parent can revoke consent for special education services. I'm assuming that the student either has a 504 already or has an IEP, and we're gathering data, or they're in the evaluation process. But just to randomly just be going, oh, by the way, we're doing an FBA on your kiddo, you have to have given written consent. You can revoke your consent. However, just know that whatever they've done is not revocable, meaning that if they've done part of a BIP, a baby BIP, I love that. It's part of your record. I love that you young kids are able to do all of the fancy schmancy stuff. I barely can get out of the bathroom without burning myself with a curling iron.
Hey, we do what we can. So we have a kiddo in 6th grade. Parents saying they've been on RTI since 2nd grade.
Somebody should be shot in the ankle immediately. Just go get a water gun tonight and shoot them in the ankle tomorrow. It's past, it's egregious, it's unacceptable. RTI is for a moment. It's just for a minute. And because what happens is that RTI turns into special ed for the general education teacher. I do want to answer a question in here. Somebody said, do you come in guns blazing? I don't even have a gun. And blazing might catch my hair on fire. I come into every meeting as lovely as I am here with you fine people. But I don't move my position for people that violate the law as it relates to children with disabilities. I don't move. I'm not upset. I'm not yelling. I'm clear.
And then I have a good question, and I'm going to turn it over to my fabulous counterpart. How do I ask for more support as a teacher when there are no laws in Texas about ratio for special education?
So I would go to leadership and say that I'm unable to successfully educate the students in my class and meet my ethical responsibilities as an educator in the state of Texas. Because you do have ethical responsibilities as a teacher.
Okay. What do you do if a district isn't following an IEP?
I would say, what is wrong with y'all? Well, first I would say, as I always say, I would convene a meeting and I would say, and these two young ladies behind me have been in meetings with me. I understand that, this didn't happen. We can't go backwards. But going forward, when can, Christina expect for the IEP to be implemented with fidelity? And then I close my mouth. Believe it or not, in most meetings, I'm not talking much. I know it's hard to believe, ask any of my husbands. And then I wait for their answer. So I've established a couple of things. I'm not asking you if you're implementing the IEP. I already know that. And then based on what the parents are in agreement to, I might file with OCR to have confirmed adjustments about the school's responsibility as it relates to implementations of the accommodations and special ed minutes. I might ask for compensatory time. I was in a meeting the other day and we got compensatory time that will be delivered over 3 years. So I have no problem asking for the order and expecting it to be delivered.
Okay, here we have a question from a teacher. How do I encourage parents to learn/demand what kids need if district isn't offering help?
So how you would learn would you would join Special Education Academy, which we have every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central. It's $47 a month. There's no contract. Stay and get all the information you need. You can never learn enough about special education, and God bless schools and budgets. They just don't have the budget or time, or they haven't made the commitment to train teachers in their responsibilities under the federal law or state statutes, right? Our state regulations in Texas are almost 400 pages long. I'm a weirdo and I've printed them out and read them. The federal law is 115 pages long. I can't expect a lovely teacher to know that. So Special Education Academy was started, and over 2/3 of the people that are on the academy are school-based members. So come on. I do want to answer this question. Several people ask what my background is. My background is IKEA, but if that's not really what you're asking, but I'm here all night. My background is baptism by fire. And what that means is I had a perfect life, and then I had a child that struggled, which was shocking to me because I never struggled in school. Went to school, it was a hot mess, and a few months into that, after things got all crazy and sideways, I started on a volunteer call list in Texas for the Texas Education Agency for new parents in the 90s when I was, a toddler. And I just fell in love with this space. I fell in love with these kids. I fell in love with the law. And the answer's there. If we look at all of the information in totality and give the kiddo supports and services, I've never had a kiddo that couldn't win with the right supports. And that's the most amazing, rewarding thing that I could ever do, is to walk alongside a kiddo's educational healing. And I love it. And I love training other people so that we can all raise up special ed bosses to serve these kiddos.
Someone in the comments said that they suddenly feel that their Christmas light necklace is inadequate.
It's at the Disney World at the Magic Kingdom. It's $20. Just go online, get it, $20. And if you don't know where to get it, ask Alicia. She'll get it for you. All right? It's the very best because I am starved for attention. So, and next week I'll have my ears on. So it'll be Sally, perfect. Jesse, Raphael meets Nancy Grace meets the Long Island Medium. I feel like a mixture of all three of those. I know that was for you, Alicia. That was for you.
Hey, well, Shannon's looking for her next star on the roster. I had a question. As a resource teacher, I have a gen ed teacher who tells me that it's not her business if the student meets goals or not.
That's interesting because the gen ed teacher is to support the resource teacher. So I would say it looks like you fell this weekend and bonked your head. And then I would say muffin, because that kind of makes us more alike than different. But of course, it's her responsibility. You don't have, if a student goes back into general ed, she's obviously an implementer on those goals as well.
And then we have a lot of people asking about the academy, which we have starting in a little over 20 minutes.
Yeah, so just go to Special Education Academy. You can sign up for the academy there. We have workbooks. I love a good workbook. We train on the law. We're in a series right now in assistive technology, the Assistive Technology Act of 1998, getting your child devices and services and service minutes under the law. So we would love to have you.
Shannon.
Okay, I've got one here.
The girls are so well behaved.
What services? Well, sometimes it's hard going through the comments and the questions. What services can OT do with the child at school? Is it only motor skills, or can they do sensory?
It's a fantastic question. So OT as an educational need comes out into two categories, right? So you're going to ask for OT evaluation in fine motor or OT evaluation in sensory. So OT as it relates to fine motor is going to be, can I hold a writing instrument? Can I hold a crayon? Am I a good stapler? I had a kid one time who was 5, had a goal in stapling. I'm like, ma'am, how much stapling? Like, I feel like he's going to have like big, large forearms that needs to put down the stapler. Or scissors, right? That functionality of your hand, right? Sensory is those things that you would need as it relates to an educational need, which could be everything from, light coverings to weighted vests to blankets to fidgets to a gazillion other things. But again, you want to make sure that you ask for those evaluations. So I always ask for OT in written expression or fine motor, however they say it, or OT in sensory. And then I would ask for AT in written expression, which is something totally different.
Okay. What do I need to do for my high school student with an IEP to transfer to college?
So you don't need to do anything. So if a student has a disability and they have needs for accommodations, when you get to the disability office at the college, you would go to the disability office and say, hey, I have need for accommodations. Here's the paperwork that I had from school, whether it was a 504 and IEP. And then that school, that college will talk through available accommodations at their campus.
Okay. I'm going to pass it to the lovely Christina. Are you ready?
So I just want to ask this question about pragmatic. So pragmatic is social language. It's probably the most under-tested area for speech, and it should be tested, right? So do I have that appropriate social reciprocity, For instance, like we walk in, the teacher's crying. You say, hey, Miss Smith, why are you crying? Because I lost my cat, right? And the kid goes, oh, look at my trains, right? That's not the appropriate response. So make sure that you're always asking for speech and language evaluation to include pragmatics, whether they have autism or not.
And then someone just commented, my son's school doesn't have SLP and don't want to pay outside service.
So if you're not getting, I mean, you have to have an SLP available to every campus just in the United States. If they don't, then ask for a private and ask for compensatory time.
Then my kid has an IEP and has the ability to retake tests, but his AP classes aren't providing his accommodations. Is that okay?
So AP is a slippery slope. So there is no legal requirement to have support in advanced classes. The assumption is that should you choose, because an advanced class is a choice that you make. It's not part of the state standard. So should I choose to take Calculus 12 or whatever they have, that's a choice, and that's an assumption that you don't need physical support as it relates to in-class support or a para. Retaking the test would not be an accommodation in that class because it's a class above the state standard. But you could have that accommodation in other classes. It's a very slippery slope. I have clients flailing on the floor crying as I pull their kids out of AP classes so that they can be successful in school. It's very hard for parents to get that down.
My daughter has, and it's moving to Zoom, yet her IEP says to limit screen time. Is this legal?
So so let's just talk about virtual services. First, when we talk about remote services or a virtual plan, those things are not codified. So because the school offers you remote whatever, you don't have to take it, right? So there are certain instances that might be the only thing available. Maybe a kid's homebound, that's the best way to get their counseling. But there's nowhere under IDA that says your speech and language services have to be remote. So I wouldn't accept that if it doesn't have a meaningful benefit for my kiddo. There are some kiddos that do great with online services.
I was told in an IEP meeting that we can't have both a 504 and an IEP. Is that correct?
Oh, Lord. So so the 504 is just accommodations. So when you have an IEP, it has accommodations. Maybe if you have a robust 504, it has an IHP, an individualized healthcare plan. You can have an individualized healthcare plan if you're general ed, special ed, 504, Republican, Democrat, liberal. Anybody can have a healthcare plan. You could have a behavior plan in a 504 and in an IEP. So if you go from an 504 to an IEP, you would just take those components and move it into the IEP.
All right, and then we have a couple of questions about the academy. How do we join, and what class would benefit a parent of a child with special needs as well as a SPED para?
The academy is going to benefit it all, right? Because we cover it all, because we're all advocates for that student. They're not exempt of each other. And it's about learning to collaborate based on the parameters of the law. IDA was built on the consensus model. Doesn't mean we come to consensus, but it means that ability to articulate other persons at the meeting position, whether or not you agree with them or not. And so we train everybody. Yes, we do professional development for teachers. Yes, we do them nationally. We do them in person and remotely. I love teachers. Teachers are hysterical. I mean, what kind of person pays to wear jeans? That's a unique egg. I think you guys should just wear jeans under your regular pants and say, I'm in here. I didn't pay money. That's what I would do. I would be a teacher. It would just be one day, but oh, what a day it would be.
It would be a day for
it's it's $47 a month for the academy.
And then especially teaching, I love that. Can we get PD hours from the academy?
Professional development hours. We don't have professional development hours yet. We are working on them for our 2-day intensive.
Excellent. They keep my child out of inclusion classes when the parent is absent. Is that legal?
Well, it's not illegal because you don't have the support there, but I would log those hours so you get those minutes back. I did see somebody just say that you have to tell somebody when you're recording them. It's illegal if you don't. It's not. I'm a certified mediator for the family courts. I have no requirement to tell somebody I'm recording them as long as I am aware that I am recording and I don't have an intellectual disability, nor does the person I'm speaking with have an intellectual disability and they're not a minor. So let me just tell you what I record on. Otter.ai, OTTER.ai. It's 400 and 400. It's 540 minutes for free. What I like about it is it's live transcript at the same time. And then for 6,000 minutes, I think it's $10 a month.
Then somebody asked, how do you diagnose dyslexia?
So doctors make diagnoses. And so school-based members are using criterion measures to make determinations. So hopefully that's what's happening. We're determining whether there's a need for dyslexia intervention. But if you need a diagnosis, that's only going to come from a physician. Yes, Otter.ai is an app. I wish that they were like paying me, like just some free hairspray or something.
Okay. I'm a parent of a high schooler who gets OTPT speech, and then SETST. I'm not sure about that abbreviation. And a para. How does he get all of that in a short day?
I don't know.
That's a lot.
I don't know.
And then here's a good question. How?
Oh, Love, Dogs, and Wine. You guys have the best names. Love, Dogs, and Wine. My daughter just sent me a picture of like this very wound type dog typing in a red sweater with a headset like she was at Wendy's. And she goes, Mom, this is what I think you look at IEP meetings. I'm like, that is exactly right. It's like this German Shepherd with glasses on.
So somebody asked again about the recording app. It's Otter.ai. Mm-hmm. And then we had a question.
Yes, Tammy King Bang. I'm sorry. Yes, Tammy King Bang. Go back and tell them to add on pragmatics. Sorry.
Let's see. Can you request a full report of the funding for your child and where the money is going?
So you can't request a full report of the funding for your child, but you can do a FOIA. FOIA. For you. Freedom of Information Act. FOIA. FOIA. It's a Freedom of Information Act, and you can ask for any information you want, like how much money did you guys spend on that due process fighting that advocate who whooped you, right? And then you can find out the school district spent $111,000 on little Omi, and they lost. So just go to your district. You don't have to live in the district. I could do a Freedom of Information Act for Dallas Independent School District and ask for their budget on special ed attorneys. I could ask for their budget on construction. I can ask for their budget on 504. Yeah. Freedom of Information Act.
My son's evaluation for early childhood is coming up. What should I ask for?
The truth. I'd ask for the truth. So in his evaluation, I would ask for that the school-based members, that the multidisciplinary team tell you about the acuity of his disability and his identified critical needs and identified strengths. So you can write a robust IEP to mitigate the impact of that. Landline raised. I'm just in love with them. You can't handle the truth. The one-liners are so good. Like, I hope we're stealing these. Landline raised. Because when you say you're stealing something, it's no longer illegal. I feel like that's the truth. I don't know if it is.
What should I do if my child was tested without my consent?
I would roll on the floor and yeah. Yes, Shannon.
All right. Yes. You ready?
Okay. Would you please explain the difference to us between academic needs and educational needs?
So all needs are educational needs. So the difference is that we talk to parents about academic needs and we shouldn't be doing that. The law says what is the educational need? So is the educational need functional? Is the educational need academic? Is the educational need behavioral? Is the educational need communicative? Is the educational need as it relates to literacy, like Braille? Is the educational need for orientation and mobility? It's always looking at an educational need because the need occurs while you're receiving an education. The need occurs while you're receiving an education. Okay, so if somebody says they don't have an academic need, say that is fantastico, which is not really a word, but I like saying it. So we're not looking at academic need, we're looking at educational need. Does that include sometimes an academic deficit? Yes, but not always.
Okay. Someone asked, do preschoolers qualify for compensatory time?
A human that's between the ages of 3 and 22 that have an IEP that have been denied a free appropriate public education and there's an identified violation of FAPE are due compensatory time if you have the right representation and know how to ask for it.
Okay. Testing requested didn't get completed in the time frame. What can I do?
So I'd email the school and say, I'm aware that we're out of timeline. When can we expect that to be delivered, and how will you compensate for those support services not being delivered? And yes, somebody had asked about a Freedom of Information Act. Yeah, we have that form in the academy. It's for any need, right? You ask for raw data collection sheets and you don't get them, not a problem. We'll just do a Freedom of Information Act request.
Can public Texas pre-K suspend a 4-year-old for not listening? Oh, it just went away. For not listening. It said he had speech goals and speech-related needs, I believe, is the rest of the question.
Can they suspend them? Is that what he said?
Yes, sorry, of course, everything moved as soon as
or maybe can they dismiss them? Okay, so when that comes back, bust a move 03. I like that. So a functional need would be maybe I need help buttoning my clothes. Maybe I need help tying my shoes. Maybe I need help feeding. Maybe I need help getting my shoes off and on. Maybe I need help learning to, put my own safety belt on in a car. Those are functional needs. Maybe I need to learn how to brush my teeth. School removed text-to-speech in all but math, science, and social studies with kid with dyslexia. That's just goofy.
Okay, here it is. Can public Texas pre-K suspend 4-year-old for not listening? Yes, IEP speech and speech-related behavior needs.
What? If you could be suspended for not listening, I would have been suspended. What are you talking about? You can be suspended for a violation of the student code of conduct. Did they bring a hatchet to school? Did they threaten to hurt themselves or others? Were they selling drugs at the porta potty? What? Yeah.
Okay, school is trying to reduce services, accommodations. Child is entering kindergarten, has IEP, DHH.
School is trying to do what, Shannon?
Reduce their services and accommodations.
Based on what? So we do everything based on data. So based on what data, right? So just because you met your goals doesn't mean we reduce services. We work on another service to mitigate the impact of their disability. But if you have DHH itinerant services, if you have an eligibility of deaf and hard of hearing, we're reducing nothing.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question. I'm going to pass it to Miss Christina. If my IEP from old school has accommodations, does new school need to follow?
Oh, I like that. Landline. Opinions aren't data. Data's data. Can we just... Yes, that's going to go on a shirt. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention, Shannon. I was distracted by the landline. So what did you say?
If my IEP from old school has accommodations, does the new school need to follow them?
They're actually required to implement them for a set period of time under IDEA.
All right, how long does the district have to... Oh, okay. Can an autistic student be on an IEP although they excel academically?
Absolutely. I had a student that was second in her class, and she was on an IEP. So she was past gifted. Do you have an educational need? And most kiddos that are very high intellect have needs in emotional and social behaviors.
Then someone said, they don't see an academic need, but there's child has executive functioning needs. Who provides services for that?
So a special education teacher, related service provider, maybe an LSSP, a social worker, to work on that, organization, planning, organization, all of that. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so again, was asking about the next couple of 2 days.
Yeah, the next 2-day training is in 5 seconds. You can just log on and take it. We have a digital on demand for the 2-day. Or our next one in person in Houston is the 14th and 15th of January, that Martin Luther King Jr. Saturday and Sunday. And we sold out this last time. That was just a gaggle of people. It was just shenanigans. We had such a good time.
Then I pulled my kid from a Texas high school. Can I get their records and transcripts still for college?
So high school records don't transfer to college as it relates to an IEP. But your transcript you can get from your high school as long as your high school is still there. So I could still reach out to Lake Travis High School to see my amazing transcript where I was number 9 in my class. I don't want to brag. Doesn't really matter. There were 34 people. I was number 9.
All right. We're going to answer probably 3 more questions, and then we are going to get ready for the academy.
She's really tough.
We're going to have the hot button on the leave. So my kid has a 504 and is below average grades on math and 2 years and for 2 years and still failing. Any suggestions?
Full individualized testing for area of need, learning issues, attention, and academic needs. So you need an IEP. That's the only way that you're going to protect him.
Somebody wanted to tell you you're adorable.
Thank you.
Then, so,
by the way, Kentucky, I'm going to be there in about 6 weeks. I can't tell you why, but it's going to be glorious. Yes, you can be an advocate if you go to our training. That's what we're there. We're there to train you to be an amazing advocate, however you sit at the table.
That's right. So my son needs a feeding therapy drastically. Does the school have to provide this?
Yeah. So what you request first is a dysphagia evaluation to make sure that we're meeting all of his feeding needs and have identified them correctly. And then you have services around that.
Perfect.
And this is the last one, Christina. I'm not going to tell you again.
I know. All right. So most important, how do people connect with you? How do they find an advocate?
So you just reach out to us at admin@specialeducationacademy.com. We have a team of advocates that I've personally trained. It took over 6 months for them to train with me, and it was intense. Or if you needed me for something, or teacher development, or representation, or records review, we do all of that with admin@specialeducationacademy. And so we're going to see you guys next Tuesday. I was going to say next Thursday. Next Tuesday, same time, 7 p.m. on the talk. Remember, if you have questions ahead of time, just email us at advocate@specialeducationacademy, and we'll keep them anonymous. We certainly want to answer all the school-based members' questions, and we greatly appreciate all of you. We love you. Remember, when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody. And we'll see you guys in the next training.